Okay, verse 13 raises a question. Why do you think Jesus says that Pergamum is where Satan has his throne? Did anybody manage to look at a commentary and take a look at some of the possibilities there? So the city is where Satan has his throne. The throne of Satan, which speaks about sort of his capital city, the place where he would dwell, or a very important centre from which he is active. Does anybody come up with any alternatives to this?
Because of the many temples.
Yes, that's one possibility. Many temples.
Altars and shrines.
Altars, yep.
The centre of imperial worship?
Yes, that's another possibility. Of imperial worship. If you can read my horrible scrawl. Anything else? Well, I'll give you some other possibilities as well. It's been suggested that it's like a geographical metaphor to do with the geography of the region. Because the city was built on a plateau, there was an acropolis set on a plateau that looked like a crown. And some have suggested that's superstition and associated with Satan. The idols and the altars, that's that one there. What else? The altar of Zeus on top of the mountain was a magnificent structure that dominated the city. The legs of the giants in the sculpture were serpents' tails, and such a structure epitomised idolatry and paganism. It was the centre of the cult of Asclepius, which was the symbol of the serpent. And the serpent, of course, in the Bible is associated with Satan. And in this book, in chapter 12, verse 9, Satan is associated with serpent, also 20, verse 2. So the place where Satan dwells, that's been another suggestion as well. But I think overall, of all these options, I think the best one is this one. It was the centre of imperial worship. And the reason why I say that is because the problem for the people at Pergamum, we're going to learn about this very, very soon, was the persecution resulting from the imperial worship. So people worshipped Caesar. And because of that, because of the influence of that in the society and the culture, the Romans were exercising persecution against the Christians, and there was one man, Antipas, who was martyred in connection with the city. So that's the problem, and it just shows that Satan is prepared to use civil powers in order to achieve his ends when he wishes to. This is why in the New Testament we read of principalities and powers associated with the devil. Because he's prepared to use civil powers to exercise his influence in the world. And in chapter 13, we're going to read of a great beast that rises up out of the sea, and Satan being involved in that beast and what he's doing. And of course that's Rome. We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves then, but that's what's coming a little bit later on in the book. So I think of the various suggestions, this is the one that I would go for those reasons, because it fits the context very well, and it fits what's coming later in the book. And one of the main themes of the book is the way the Christians are doing, faced with this persecution that was leading to martyrdom. Questions or comments on that? Yes, Craig.
Yeah, it's. I find it really distressing because if then emperor worship or other corollaries to that, the fact that the emperor, the government, rules and reigns, and everybody looks to it for sustenance, everybody looks to it for comfort, everybody looks to it for their support. I see too many parallels with our own day and age.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about myself here. I was just writing to somebody just before I asked why I'm late. The degree to which I trust in government largesse.
Yes, okay, well that is a problem. Increasingly the state was taking more of a role in terms of our society and societies, structures and stability. One of the things that Rome also did was that establish this thing called the Pax Romana. Does anybody know what that means?
Peace.
Yes. Pax Romana, the peace of Rome. So whenever Rome went to extend the empire, it just basically conquered all the opposition. Wiped out the opposition and said, you can continue to function as long as you pay tribute to Rome and so on and so forth. We'll let things... But there will be peace. There will be stability for you. You can continue to practice your religions. You can continue to practice your commerce. In fact, your trade will increase because we've got roads. The Roman roads were also a major feature of the empire and what it was doing. So there was a certain economic security, there was a certain prosperity, there was a certain freedom from outside harm that resulted from your nation being within the ambit of the Roman Empire. And some people thought that was very, very good. And they were prepared to pay honour to the emperor for that. And if he said, well, I want a temple in this place, and that's fine, you know, you can worship me. They said, well, thanks very much, 3 bags full, we'll give you that because we like what you're doing. And there's a constant tendency we have to look for saviours for all social ills and problems and so on in society. And there's a natural tendency to look to the government of the day, which is the point that Craig is making. And that's a real danger. Because Satan can make use of civil powers to accomplish his ends, which are, of course, antithetical to the progress of the kingdom. He doesn't like the kingdom of Christ.
Yeah, just to round that off, it's not just so much that we turn to the government for these things, but we turn to it instead of turning to God.
Yes, good point, Craig. So we're turning to those saviour figures instead of turning to God. And that's something that these Christians back in Pergamum have a message for us that they didn't do that, as we're about to see. There was a man called Antipas. His name, incidentally, means against all. I'm not sure whether that is somehow a reference to his character. He's prepared to stand up against all opposition. But certainly he was a man who stood up for Christ and consequently was martyred. And incidentally, the word witness is this martys in the Greek, M-A-R-T-Y-S, anglicised, if put it that way. Martys. Witness, martys, from which we get the word martyr. And it came to mean martyr in the 3rd century, so a bit later than our period in the 1st century. But the basis for doing that was prepared earlier on because people would stand up and witness for Christ. They would be faithful witnesses, and then they would suffer persecution and maybe even death, which is what happened to Antipas.
Can you draw a parallel between Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar?
In what respect, Willie?
Because Nebuchadnezzar expected all the people to bow before him, and Daniel refused. Daniel and his 3 friends refused.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very good point Willie's making. Can we draw a parallel between this situation, people refusing to bow to the emperor, and what happened in the book of Daniel when Nebuchadnezzar set up his great statue and required everybody to worship him? And of course Daniel and his 3 friends refused. Once again, it was a case of we will not worship this false god, even though he's claiming all of this power and authority. And they were preserved, and it was the Lord who won the battle there. And ultimately, it's also the Lord who's winning the battle in the city of Pergamum. So I think it's a very good parallel, actually. And it's a call for us to resist that kind of, just giving over to governmental power and authority.